All right. So welcome, Miss Shantay Powell. How are you?
I am doing pretty good. Pretty good.
Pretty good is good. And so, first of all, thank you for accepting the invitation to be on this morning. Um, like I was just telling you a second ago, this really is an opportunity to share stories of people that typically wouldn't be highlighted in the mainstream media, right? Oftentimes they chase the celebrities, they chase the money or what have you. But there are many of us who are doing great work in other ways and in many different atmospheres in many arenas. And so what I'm doing is I'm finding some of my friends who have done some amazing things in my perspective, and I'm asking you all to share your stories with the world and with my audience. And so, thank you again for agreeing. And so, to start us off, first of all, please introduce yourself, and if you can remember, tell us how did we meet? Because I have my friends on here, people that I know. And so I would love for you to just kind of, in your words, talk about our relationship as well. So who are you? And then how did we meet?
Well, first of all, thanks for considering me and inviting me. The vision of this is inspiring, so I'm honored to be here and to share my story. Um, we met. It's been a long time since I had to think about how we actually met. I know we met through um, church, but I don't exactly remember how, like this, the actual cute meet cute, whatever these kids calling it. But I just remember um, connecting with your genuineness. Like you were just genuinely you, and the conversations we had was just real. Um, and you were a very deep thinker, and I just love that about you. And you're just you, like, so I don't remember the details, but I remember why I brought
Right, exactly. Same here. We were at church, and what I recall was that, I was a young single mother. You were a young single mother. And at the
yep.
time, it was just like we were I noticed that you were going through things that I had already been through. And so it was just like, because I really took a liking to you, I was just like, hey, if you need anything, if you need somebody to talk to, what have you. And so I feel like that was how we kind of built our connection. And then from there,
Mhm.
we kind of added some other girls to the group. And then you brought me into your group of friends, and I would bring you into my group of friends and family. And we just kind of became family from there. And, as I watched you matriculate, I was just like so inspired. I was like, this girl is bad. This girl is amazing. And I was like, this is the type of friend that I need in my life. And I was like, she's not going
Oh,
nowhere. So now you're my sister.
yeah, we locked in.
That's right. That's
We
right.
locked in.
All right, but professionally, or I guess professionally is the best way to say it. Yes, how would you describe where you are right now in your career, or and what you do, what you're doing in the world?
I think my connection
You're here.
got a little messed up. Okay. All right. So what was the question? The last
I was
question?
saying professionally, how would you describe what you're doing in the world these days?
So I forgot to turn my phone off. Hold on.
Oh man, I forgot to give the rules. Turn off the ringer.
Yeah, my bad.
That's all
Uh
good.
so right now I'm in sales. I've been doing sales for over a decade now. I got into the industry by accident, by necessity at first, and it's crazy. I tried to get out of it for so long, and I just kept growing and moving cross country. I started in LA. I'm on the East Coast now. We've been here for uh, next month. It'll be 7 years.
Wow, that time flew.
7 years. Yep. And I didn't want to come here. I kept thinking, oh, we're just going to be here for a year. And God had different plans. And um, and it's crazy, even though I didn't want to be here, it just like now looking back, God put us in fertile ground. So
Mm-hmm.
everything that we tried to do or wanted to do, we're doing it here in the place that
Interesting.
I did not want to be. So every time we're like, okay, let's try to make the move back west, something else happened. So this last one, we said we are gonna move back after Demetrius graduated from high school
Mm-hmm.
and he got into an Ivy League. So now it's like, okay, well, we gotta stay another year and make sure he gets settled. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know what's next, but I'm still in sales. Um, in the stone industry, but selling to like commercial projects, large multifamily developers, hospitality, things like that. And I recently decided to go back to school because I've
Mm-hmm.
worked in the construction industry for an extended amount of time. First, I was just chasing the money because there's a lot of money in sales, but I saw the impact on the peripheral of what construction was doing to neighborhoods, especially with communities of color.
Mm.
And and it was happening everywhere. It was happening in California, and then when I moved to New York, it was happening here, and I didn't understand how this was happening, why it was happening, but I knew that it was consistent. The damage
Okay,
was
wait a minute, because you're
consistent.
piquing my curiosity now. So what exactly did you notice was happening?
Like gentrification.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how developers can come in and buy up properties and in neighborhoods that are already fragile, like originally they're designed to be urban,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they're not near transportation. Maybe they're near an airport, some place that the community considers undesirable. But
Mm-hmm.
as the suburban markets or it could even be like a core market, as that continues to grow and it comes and it expands out to what used to be undesirable, then city officials make it desirable, but they use different techniques. So they'll use like tax subsidies for developers to come in and revitalize a city. But so they revitalize it, but it's at market rate. So the people
Mm-hmm.
who live there are now priced
Now they
out.
can't
They can
afford it.
exactly, they can no longer afford it. If they're given money to relocate somewhere else, they can't afford to move back, or it takes so long to redevelop 4 or 5, sometimes 10 years, that by
Mm.
that time it's done, it's difficult for a family to then relocate again after
They've
those
already
years
gotten
because
established somewhere else.
exactly. So
Mm.
there's different psychological aspects, economical impacts of that affect opportunities, education, all of that. So I tried to I tried to do something like part-time just to get involved because that's kind of new territory for
Mhm.
me, like a new field. And I just wasn't getting callbacks. I'd send resumes, I got nothing. So I decided to go back to school, and it's been so eye-opening. And it's a different kind of love because it's not for money. It's because I really want to know how, at this point in my life, how can I contribute to make an impact, a positive impact on my community?
I love that. I love that. Often, when starting out in careers, we are chasing the money because that's, we're like, okay, we're out of high school, we're out of college, and now we got to live. And so, where is the money, right? But at some point, I think that if you stay in it long enough, the evolution of it is, okay, I don't want to just do this just to do it. I want to do something that I'm excited to wake up and do every morning. And so, I'm happy to hear that you're at that point in your career. That's really, really, really exciting to hear about. And yeah, I think before we move forward, though, I would love to hear your origin story. So, where were you born? Where did you grow up? And can you share something about maybe your family dynamics that kind of shaped the person who you are today?
Yeah, I have a very unique story. I am Black and Samoan. My parents met in Carson, California, very young. They were like middle school sweethearts. And my mom ended up having me when she was in high school. And, that didn't work out. My dad was, he was young. So he wasn't working. So he found creative ways to make money and he got caught up. So my mom moved us back to Hawaii, where she was originally from, and so I lived there for like all of my childhood. From we left when I was 3. I think I came back. I was in middle school.
Mm,
So that transition from living in Hawaii to now coming back to Carson, Compton, because I her family was in Compton, my dad's family was in Carson. So that was a huge culture shock for me. So that was, I adjusted. I had a lot of family support. Um, but it was still tough because my parents weren't like traditional parents. They had their own issues. They had their own hurts and traumas. There was addiction and abuse, and my mom was a single mom. Um, but my grandmother was always solid. She was always consistent. She was always supportive. And then, so I went to Compton High. After Compton, the last day of school, my freshman year, she was picking me up, and she usually picks me up at the school, and she was like, meet me at the corner store. I don't know why. I think she just didn't want to drive through the traffic.
mm,
So I was like, okay, no problem. And from the school to the corner store, there's like I don't know what that is, like a ravine or something, but there's like a long brick wall. And all the kids was walking, and my cousin just snatched me. I don't know. She turned around and she said she saw the guns coming out of the window, and she just grabbed me and we ran into traffic across the street because they was coming this way. So we ran on the other side because they was just shooting at the wall. Like there was nowhere for the kids to go. Then after that, my grandma was like, yeah, you're not going back to that
what
school.
the hell?
Yeah, that was the last time. That was the last day of school, my freshman year. And then she moved me to Artesia. So I went to
Hmm.
school in Artesia. Um, and and then we took that black flight to Lancaster,
Hmm.
like my end of my junior year. So I finished out there. I went to community college. I was pretty good in school, but I was worried about money. My
Mm,
parents didn't have money. I didn't have the support. Nobody was really pushing college, but I knew like I did enjoy school. So I figured that that was going to be something that, I was going to do. I like to write. I like to read. Um, but those things when you're in school, moving around a lot, it's like it's not encouraged,
hmm.
like it's not something you don't have conversations like, oh, what book did you read? You know what I'm saying? It's like,
It doesn't happen very frequently in many families. Yeah.
right. So going to my grandma's, my books would be over there. So I'd spend the weekends just reading, like all weekend.
Hmm.
And then when I go back to my mom's or, to my cousins, it was just back to that same grind, It was fun though. As a kid, you don't see like the trade-off. You don't see the sacrifices at that time. You just think like these are my friends. They got my back because you in the trenches with them. Like
Right.
these are people that like you got to walk home to school. You got to walk to school. You got to walk home with that. Uh, if something happens, you can call them. You just feel safe around them. Like they become like, and you never think you're never gonna be friends with these people. Like my
Okay.
grandma would tell me, like I would have like heated conversations. I read journal. I wrote. I told you I wrote, so I used to write journals a lot.
Uh,
And I had an entry. Um, I was just mad, just writing all kind of f bombs and stuff like about my grandmother. And
see,
then I'm like, why was I so mad? And I wrote, it's because she wouldn't let me go to the movies. And I'm like, all these people are going. I don't remember none of them now. Like I wrote all these
right.
names. I don't even know who these people are. But when I'm, like thinking of my young self, like these were my people. Like these were gonna
That's
be my
so
friends for life.
interesting that you say that because I find often working with the middle school students and the high school students, their friend group are their world. And
That's
it's
life.
hard for them to imagine that, when you graduate, you will separate, and these people, some of them will stay in your life, and many of them will not. And so, how do you balance that? Like, knowing that these are your friends for now, but there's so much more to life that comes later. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's tough. I think with everything it's just the process. Like God separates, when it's time, it happens. Like when you're in it, you love, and that's just what it is. I mean, we're both single parents. Like that wasn't what
mhm.
we set out to be, you know what I mean? Like my
The
son
way
was
life
complete
happens, life,
love.
life.
I thought that was my forever, but
Right.
it didn't happen that way. Like that's just kind of how life happens. But I think you can't really change those things. Like the only thing you have control over is yourself
That's
and
true.
trusting that no matter what happens, everything is going to be okay. If you lose this friend, if you lose a spouse, if you lose a parent, like you still good. Like there's still beauty in that, in all of it.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Thinking about friends and how sometimes friends can find ways to get into things or what have you that maybe we shouldn't be getting into. I'm just wondering, what type of obstacles did you face as you were trying to figure it out and mature from, the high school into your adult years?
Man, what didn't? I I mean, I can just thank God that I survived some of that stuff because some of the places that I went, the times that I went because my cousin had a crush on somebody, who she wanted to go see that was in the PJs. So we took the bus up. We said, "Oh, I'm going to her house." She said, "I'm going to her house."
And
And
y'all
we was
somewhere totally different.
somewhere totally different. They tried to get us to hustle for them. Like they was like, "Well, you out, you may as well." Like it was some crazy, crazy stuff. But luckily, you know, me and my cousin, we was like best friends, and
Hmm.
we was just like in love with love. It was a little bit boy crazy, but we wasn't really, we weren't really like doing drugs and stuff. I think once the drugs get involved, it alters your judgment in your
Mm-hmm.
perspective of like what is safe and what's not, you know. I know weed is legal now, so that's like, I know a lot of kids are doing that and vaping and all that stuff, but we kind of stayed away from that. Like we were around it, but we didn't partake in it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, unless we were like together in our bedrooms, like sneaking and doing stuff
Somewhere where
like
you
that.
felt it was safer.
Yeah, but we was still in some stuff. Like we was still taking buses to places and just in places that like could have ended up way worse than what it did. But I think people knew because we wasn't like trying to drink and do drugs and all, and there was a lot of offers. Like
Hmm.
there's plenty of there was plenty of that going around.
Lots of
And
opportunity. Yeah.
yeah. And I think because we were both this like committed to that, not explicitly, we never talked about it like, oh, we not doing this. It's just something that we just didn't do and we didn't do it together.
Hmm.
So we always had each other like to navigate through that. Like I don't know if it would have been the same if I was like the only one who was not doing it, or if
That's
she was.
interesting. What I hear you saying is it's always important to have someone around you who's like-minded, who has your back, who's going to hold you accountable, even when you're out there doing crazy stuff, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes that word of wisdom or that person that okay, I'm not by myself, can allow you to maintain and to stay out of things and not to make it even worse. Because sometimes you compound the problem by doing more on top of what you're already doing. And so, yeah.
Yeah. It's like you hold on to, those core values. Like you could make mistakes, you can do, certain things, but like it's just certain boundaries you just don't cross.
I love that. I love that. It's like always have a threshold that you're not going to cross, and you should know that ahead of time. And you have to
Yeah.
be ready to maintain that even when you have peer pressure coming from the outside asking you to do something else. I think that's very important as adults and as children, for sure, as children. Yeah.
Yeah. And she would tell me like if she wasn't feeling it, like it was time to go. Like that was, if I was ready to go, she was like, all right, it's time to go. So we always had each other's back, like, when it came to that. So if I
Okay.
was crossing the line, she would tell me, I'm like, okay, I'm going too far, like, but kids are kids, like you're curious, you try to get away, you test your limits. But and
It's a part of the
it's
process.
yeah, it is part of the process. But the difference is when you in communities of colors, it's a lot of minds,
Mm,
it's a lot of things that can trip people up um for a long time that wouldn't
mhm,
normally, like you could
mhm.
get caught shoplifting or something. And in other communities, it's treated like a petty crime. Like, oh, I know your mom.
You're a
I'm gonna
kid that
take.
just made a mistake, right?
Yeah. Or you have like a stern conversation with them. You scare them a little bit. You're like, either you're gonna work this off, or I'm gonna call the cops, or I'm gonna call the cops, or I'm gonna call your mom. Like, what do
Mhm,
you want me to do? But
mhm,
for us, we don't always get that pass because, especially for our boys, because they look like men at such
mhm,
young
mm.
ages, and they it's intimidating. So it's uh it's a tough balance. I've seen a lot of that happen to young men in our community. I've seen it with my dad. We talk about it. Well, I just lost him, but we've talked. I'm still getting used to talking about him in the past
It is
tense.
okay. Yes, yes, yes.
But we
Yes,
had a
yes.
lot of conversations about that because it took him, I think he was like in his 50s when he finally got like a legit license.
What the what? Like a license to drive a car?
Yes. He was driving, but he was always driving dirty. Like he had child support and, like DUIs and all kinds of stuff that went all of that was clear and he finally had his license. Like he felt like he just felt so good. Like he wanted to show everybody like I got my license.
That's
But
dope.
it's
That's dope.
it's crazy how like a mistake that you make at such a young age can send you into this cycle of like repetitive um infractions, that
Hmm.
just keep following you, and it's
Once you're
hard
in
to
the
break.
system, it's just like so hard to get out. Yeah. And I think that's
Yeah,
why I'm so passionate about this and making sure the message gets out there because, like you said, usually it's something that's so minute, but our system doesn't care. Our system is like, we want that money and we want you in here so we can collect, and they will do what they can do to continue to collect. Like you said, one thing compounds to another. Now, child support takes away your license, and then the license takes
yeah,
the insurance, and then all of a sudden you find your way struggling through the system when it was just like, man, if I had only known about that one thing at the beginning, none of this would have happened. And so I think it's
exactly.
important that we start this communication, open the lines of communication with the next generation to make sure that those that who are willing to listen, because some of them won't listen, they have to find out the hard way. But the ones who are willing to listen, hopefully they can learn from hearing our stories and not make those same mistakes as they're moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's possible. It's possible. I never thought of myself as like a cycle breaker. But my
But you
son
are.
told me that yesterday. Yeah. He's like, Mom, you are breaking cycles. And I was like, you know what?
I think that's why our generation is here. I think that's why our generation
Yes,
is here, for sure, for sure.
for
Okay, so
sure, for sure.
you had your friends and y'all was out there doing what you was doing, but still not going too far. When you were younger, what did you aspire to do in life, or did you have any aspirations?
Yes. When I was my earliest memory of like professional goals, I wanted to be a doctor.
Mhm.
Um, and then I realized very quickly that I did not like blood or any kind of bodily anything, boogers, just like it just I was like, yeah, this isn't gonna work for me. And then I wanted to be an astronaut. Um, we had like space camps where we had to create life in like a space shuttle and sustainable gardening, growing plants, water, energy, like all that stuff to live. We had these competitions that I was in, and every year they would send somebody to Huntsville, Alabama, to go to
Mm.
that space station out there. Um, and then I saw the training, and I was like, "Yeah, no, I don't want to do. I'm not doing that. Not doing that." And then that I watched Apollo 13, and I was like, "Yeah, no, that's like if something happens and when you get a flat tire on the road and stuff, you got AAA, you call them.
Right.
If you stuck out, who is coming to get me? Like
You just in space.
you just
Right.
out there. Just like those people been stuck on that in the
The
station for like
International Space
months.
Station.
Yeah. So I decided against that. And then when I got to high school, I started writing for the newspaper. And that's when
Mm.
everything kind of changed for me. I quit sports and I just wrote for the paper. And then I wrote in college. I ended up getting my undergraduates in communications with the emphasis in print journalism. And then I tried to go into writing when I graduated, but that's when everything was like kind of going digital. So the industry was
Mm.
saturated with experienced writers, who were looking for these like limited jobs. And but I had a minor in Japanese because of
Mm.
growing up in Hawaii. I had learned a little bit of Japanese. Like they start teaching you pretty young. So I minored because the end goal, right, was to go back home um, to Hawaii. I always trying to go back to where I left. So I ended up working for this small Japanese business woman. She sold American goods to retailers in Japan.
Mm.
So like our potato chips, wine, what else? Peanuts, roasted peanuts out of Alabama. They had to like tweak the recipe a little bit and the packaging to clear customs. So I helped with like all of that planning. those shipments and the quality control, making sure the labels were done. I did a lot of mediating between the manufacturers and our customers because Japanese has very high standards when it comes to their food quality and the labeling. So if the label isn't sealed right, like if the label is like this, not
Mm-hmm.
straight, like they
Mm-hmm.
think if you don't care about the packaging, like then you don't care, like then I won't trust
Then the
what I'm
product
putting
is
in
probably
my
not,
body.
yeah.
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 Yeah. So I learned a lot in regards to that with like the business side. And then that's kind of um what helped me grow into more sales, like understanding the business structure of stuff. That office was really small. Um, and I took that position because right out of college, when I couldn't find a writing job, I took uh, a job at Verizon Wireless because they
Mm-hmm.
have these things like they're hiring, a whole bunch of new grads and they give you a salary, benefits. Benefits were great. So I took it because I needed a job. I had to pay these student loans, but I was miserable. I
Mm.
hated it. I hated the like every second that you were clocked, everything that you did, how long you put someone on hold, how long your calls were, when you went on break, like how many breaks you took, like everything is calculated or monitored.
Just
And then
track,
when you're
yeah.
yeah, and then when you're not there, it's like you don't even matter. It's
Right.
like so I knew early on like that corporate life wasn't for me. Like I wasn't going to be happy there. And so I took that job with the small, it was three of us in the office.
Mm-hmm.
And before that I had read like a story because I think we were like in a recession during that time, like that early, it was right before 2008.
Oh yeah, so that
And
was right before everything crashed. Mm-hmm.
yeah, right before everything crashed. So the print industry was changing. You had the real estate crash looming. Like it was a bad time. It was a really bad
Mm-hmm.
time. And there was articles coming out that said that the graduates who were graduating, like the new people that were coming into the workforce, was never going to earn their fullest earning potential. Like because the economy was so bad that like the people who were coming in were now starting at a lower salary than what they would have, had they entered 4 years prior.
Yeah.
And there were economists that were predicting that that would never be recouped. Like
Mm.
we could never regain that earning. And I was like, that's a lie. Like I don't receive it. I don't receive it. Nope. So because of my experience at Verizon, how everything was so structured, you couldn't apply for another job unless you had been there for 2 years, and then you have to apply. Like I'm a stranger.
As far as moving up in the upper level.
Yes.
Okay.
It was like very, very structured.
Mm.
And I was like, no. So I intentionally went to work for a small company
Mm-hmm.
where you're very, very lean, you don't have those kinds of structures, and you have the opportunity to get in where you fit in. If you have a
Right.
skill set that the business needs, they're not going to tell you no, they're going to use it. So
Mm-hmm.
I worked for her, and if I was good at negotiating between the manufacturer and the CEO of the winery, she would let me run that conversation because she saw that we were making progress. And
You were able to handle it, so she let you do it. Right.
yeah, so I learned a lot. Like I grew so much. And so then I went to another small company, which was Caesarstone. At the time, they were small. They weren't
Okay.
as big as they are now. And the same thing, they were expanding their commercial sales. So I had already had experience with large like volume sales. So they let me run their, push their commercial sales. I was having meetings with Equity Residential, Toll Brothers, like, and I'm this little person, sitting in a cubicle. But I felt like if I could move millions of dollars on a container through an ocean from an office in Northridge, like I can have these conversations, like
That's right.
this is nothing. So it got to the point where I had jury duty, and my boss was a VP at the time, and he was fielding my calls. And the people on the other end was like, I need to talk to Shantay. And he was like, I think I can help you. And they were
Right.
like,
I was trying to
no.
bump her in the company,
Yeah.
but
It was like, no, I can help you. And they were like, no, I need to talk to her. You need to get her on the phone. But he was a great mentor. He was awesome. He put me in that position, because it was a small company and he was doing whatever he was doing, and he saw that I had influence with these developers. He let me manage those relationships. He created a space where it gave me authority, at least to them, that I was the
right.
one making the calls. I was the one approving their discounts, or so that's another thing too, is recognizing mentor opportunities. Like find a mentor, and be open. I still have mentors now, even though I've been in this industry for over a decade. There's still things that I don't know.
Right.
So yeah, always be open to learning and growing. Always make new goals. Like once you hit a goal, make new goals. And if
I
your
love
mentor
that.
can't take you beyond that, then find another mentor who can.
I love that. Yes. It's interesting. In one of the arenas that I work in, I also have life insurance license, and my mentor in that arena, one of the things that they say is ABC, always be coachable. There's always something that you can learn. And regardless of how long you've been doing something or how much experience you have doing something, you can always learn something. And so always be coachable. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. And give
So
back
you
when you
was
can. Always
running
be
things.
always be generous, like there's I did work in offices where it happens also with us,
Mm,
where if it's another Black person, another Black female, there can be like some tension where they're not eager to help and support. And
you
that's
know,
something
yeah.
that I want to change, like it shouldn't it shouldn't be that way.
Well,
And I'm
it's unfortunate because we've been pitted as competing against each other, right? Instead of, yes, we are both, the same demographic, but we are not the same person. And so we can complement each other as opposed to compete with each other. And if more
yeah,
of us would take on that mind frame, I think, yeah, it can be different. And so, yeah, it takes
yeah. I
it
think
takes
it
one of
comes
us to start
from
it.
like a living in a place of scarcity, like
Hmm.
it's where there's limited opportunities for us.
Hmm.
So we're always the 1 to 2%, in in an office, and wherever. And I feel like people think it's like affirmative action in their mind, like I'm the one Negro, so I gotta fight for my one spot. And with my boys, I try to get them to think beyond that. Like if
Yeah.
there's a scholarship opportunity, a really good one that I told my son about, and then his brother was here for the holiday, and I told him to apply. And originally, his brother was like, "Oh, well, I'm gonna just let him, do it." And I said, "But it's you guys have two different disciplines. Like you're in engineering, he's in physics, and what's meant for you is meant for you. What's meant for him is meant for him. Like there's no door that you can close that's supposed to be open for him, and vice versa.
Right.
So walk through, like knock on every door,
Right.
you know, and if somebody else gets it, like we'll celebrate that as a win. But that just means it's just not your door, but yours is the next door, you know? It's like it's not limited to success is for black people is not just limited to the number of black people. It's limited by your imagination, like what you think is
By
possible.
your mindset. Yes. I love that you said that it's a scarcity mentality type of thing because we always say that the resources are unlimited, but then we limit ourselves because we act and we matriculate as if there's only so much to go around. I feel like there are 50,000 people who do the same job, but each person is unique in how they do it. And like you said, what's meant for you is for you, and there's no one who can take it from you. So, yes,
Yeah.
wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yep. I
Okay,
feel, you know,
so
I told you I got into gardening during COVID.
yeah.
I got into gardening during COVID, and one of the things that deeply resonates with me is the seed.
Hmm.
Like, and I see all of us as seeds, which means everything you need is already within you. Everything you need. And it's just understanding what it is that you're supposed to do, like what your full potential is and where you need to be planted, you know, like a sequoia can't survive where a vineyard is. And, you know, but each of it produces its own beauty and its own specialty and its own magic. So just because you're not a grape doesn't mean that you're not magic. Just because you're not a giant sequoia, you know, like
Yeah.
everybody brings something different. And it's up to you to figure out like what that potential is, what that magic is that's within you.
You better speak, girl. You better speak.
But this our education system funnels everybody into two
Into
routes.
the
Either you're going to
same. Yep.
college or you're going to prison. But that's
Unfortunately, but I feel like there are more of us who are out there who are doing different work now. Many of the programs that I work with, we talk about preparing our students to have the most post-secondary options. And those options aren't limited to just a 4-year university or a 2-year junior college. It could be going into the workforce. It could be going into a mentorship program. It could be going into the military. It could be starting your own business, right? But the bottom line is whatever you decide that you want to do, you have to make sure that you do the research, number one. Number two, that you find the resources. Number three, that you find the mentors and the people who are out there who know how to do what you want to do, who are willing to help you do it. And I think often we limit ourselves by our imaginations or because we listen to someone else who says, oh no, we don't do that, or you can't do that. And it's like, who are you to tell me what I can or cannot do?
yeah,
At the end of the day, I decide that, and the effort that I put into it is what's going to determine how successful I am. So,
yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
one thing I would say with these younger generations that they have that we didn't have is social media.
Hmm.
So you can, like, if you have a vision of whatever it is that you want to be, you can go on LinkedIn. You can create a LinkedIn and put in that job title and add and connect with everybody who's doing that job. You can look at their resumes. You can look at their journey and see what they did to get to where they are. You can message them. Like, you're not limited by just your physical circle anymore. Like, you
Right.
can you can create the community that you want to create. And I was sharing with the boys this weekend a study that came out of Stanford called weak ties, like the
Mm,
strength of weak ties. And they did a study that like your community, your family, the people who you grow up with, right? Those are your strong ties.
okay.
But for most of us, the ties that causes the significant increase in promotions in your earning potential are weak ties. They're somebody that you used to work with that can vouch for you for another position. your work referrals or teachers, people that know you in a different way, that the numbers don't compute. They can speak to your work ethic. They
Right.
can
I hear what you're
speak
saying.
to,
So the raw data itself doesn't tell your story, but that person has that
correct.
extra information. Okay.
Correct. So you can have the raw data, but
Hmm.
you can find those people, the reputable people in within your industry, to create that tie, so that
Hmm.
they can vouch for you and
Hmm.
give you that boost. Or if you tell them you're looking for a job, or you're, working on something, and an opportunity comes up, they'll say, "Oh, I know so and so, I can introduce you." That happens to me all the time in my profession. I don't have like a lot of need to interview anymore. Like,
Hmm.
people who have worked with me in some capacity or another will just say, like, "Whenever you're ready, like,
Yeah,
we'll
I'm kind of
find a
getting to that
position
place
for
too.
you."
That's funny you should say that. Like, I still have to do the informal meeting or whatever, but like right now, I'm getting prepared to teach a course at Cal State Northridge. And it came up because someone that I was working with who used to teach that course says, "Hey, I know someone who would be perfect for this." And so they recommended me, and the same thing
Hmm.
because of that relationship. And I think that's a
Yep.
key thing. A lot of times people discount the power of relationships and really getting to know people and forming bonds in work relationships. It's not the same as
Hmm.
forming friendships outside of work necessarily, but you should have someone there that you can go to that kind of, has your back or is willing to speak up or speak out about you in those opportune times, definitely.
Yeah. I feel like we should teach a class. Like, I have some women, professional women, who are great at this. And
Mm,
when I was younger, I didn't know how to navigate those things, because I always felt like men who were friendly and wanted to help, wanted something in return. So
mm,
there was some relationships that I put strong boundaries on, where maybe they weren't, but because I was so guarded,
mm-hmm.
um, and I just really, really focused. I think I may have come off a little bit more bullish as a younger professional, but I think there's strength in our femininity. I think that there's ways for us to embrace it. Like, there's not just one way to be in the professional world. You don't have to be so masculine, and like.
Yeah, yeah, I know exactly what you mean because a lot of times women who are coming into the office space feel like they have to show up as the men do, right? But a lot of times the men want us there because we're not like them. And if we can find that balance of still being feminine, but sure and confident and all of those other things that still show that you know what you're talking about and that you are capable of doing the job. Um,
Hmm.
Sometimes you can get a lot more accomplished being the little different element in the space as opposed to
Yeah.
trying to be like everyone else in the space.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm learning to embrace that feminine power. Like, it is it's it's more effortless. I feel like I get more done, more accomplished, as opposed to me trying to be tough.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
still tough, it's still strong, but it's much more confident and impactful, I think. And it's more genuine. It's more genuinely me.
Hmm. That's the one thing that I'm learning how to do is how to be my authentic self in every situation.
Hmm.
Because often we adopt these personalities or these traits that someone has told us is effective, right? But what I've learned is that what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another. And so, yes, you do have to find what's your style and the authentic way that you can come across that gets the thing done that maybe someone else can't do. But that's
Hmm.
okay because, like you
Hmm.
said, you're being your authentic self. So,
Yeah. But I think one of the things that I really admire about you, is you can recognize. another person's authentic self, and you
Mm,
can speak to them in that space where they are in a way that is received.
mhm. I
So
tried
I
to. I tried to.
yeah. So you
Yeah, I
have a
believe
gift to
that,
connect with different people from different backgrounds, different socioeconomic levels, ages.
that's a gift of discernment, though, also being able to hear a person and see a person, and then being able to see past maybe how they said it or what have you, but to get to the heart of what it is. Because sometimes people are bringing all kinds of stuff with them. They have hurt, they have, the things that are happening in life, they have their experiences and how they're filtering what's happening. And so it's like, being able to understand that and not allow it to derail what is the heart of the conversation. It's like, okay, we're talking about this. I know that it's triggering in these ways or what have you, but okay, let me push that to the side and let's just stay with the heart of the situation. And I think that if more of us can learn how to do that, we'll be able to get past those tough points in life and in conversations or what have you that are very uncomfortable at times, but they need to
Yeah.
be had as well. And so how do you move forward, allowing and giving people the space to, process and get through whatever they're going through and still
Mhm.
forward and make progress? It's a delicate balance, definitely.
Yeah. You do it with a lot of grace. You make
Well, thank
it
you.
you do.
So, back to your story though. So, okay, you mentioned you went to 2-year college, but then you also graduated from university. So, where did you graduate from?
Cal State Fullerton.
Okay, so the Cal States. Okay, and as a young woman of color in Cal State system, how did you find that experience? Because I've heard varying experiences, and I'm wondering how was it for you?
Well, um, the Cal State experience, I went to Cal State because of the cost.
Hmm.
So I had a best friend, John, who you met. We both went to AVC together, and we both wanted to go to USC.
Mm,
And I ended up not applying because of I was scared of money, and she did. So she went to USC, and I went to Cal State Fullerton. We still stayed really close, but my experience versus hers was completely different. Like
hmm.
she was totally involved and like proud of her school, and I was commuting to school, so it was more like a job. Like I didn't have that same kind of um, student experience that I
Hmm.
think I would have, that I want my children to have. I
Hmm.
had a lot of concern about loans. I worked a lot. I had to advocate for myself a lot. There wasn't a lot of student support. um, I went to, and I took advantage of all the resources that they had. So
Hmm.
every semester before I registered, I was meeting with a counselor, going through all my classes, what I had to take. I stayed, at a 3.8 or above. Like I took it very, very seriously because I didn't have money to waste.
Right.
So, and for that time, I was like completely locked in. So I had a little bit of distance between my family and no public transportation to get back to the hood easily. So I wasn't going and they wasn't coming. And it was deep in the suburbs in Orange County. So that created kind of a natural barrier from some of the distractions that I would have been exposed to had I stayed in the city. So that benefited me, and I just locked in until I graduated. I didn't see anybody who didn't come see me.
Interesting, interesting. See, as you know, I went to SC as well, but I grew up like 5 minutes from USC around the corner. And so I was not very involved on campus because I would go home or go hang out with my friends all the time. And so similar to you, it was more like just going because it was what I had to do, but I really didn't embrace the college experience as much as I wish I would have in hindsight. Yeah.
Mhm. Yep. So, now with my son, when we were touring campuses, um, like, even if he was gonna go up the street to Rutgers, he was gonna live on campus. Like, there's just a difference. Like, it's a different experience when you, um, allow college to go through you instead of you just going through
Mm,
college.
okay. Yeah.
So that was happening. I was like, "You're gonna live on campus," and he's completely embraced it. But we toured a school. When we were looking for schools, we were looking for schools that fit him. You know,
Hmm.
he always went to small schools, so all the schools that were 20,000 and up, that was off the table. You know,
Hmm.
and then he didn't want to be in a city, so he didn't want to be in LA. He didn't want to be in New York. We went to Cambridge, and even that was like a little bit too busy. It wasn't even Boston, but that was just too. And then we went to Providence, and it was like it just checked all the boxes. Like it was a small enough town, it was a small school, and the support that they have for the kids. As a parent, I was like, this is like insane. There
Hmm.
was stuff that I didn't have where I felt like he would, that kids need,
Yeah.
when they're
They're still
transitioning.
children, regardless of the fact that
Yeah,
they're graduated from high school. They aren't quite adults just yet. Yeah.
yeah. So that just became the dream school, which happened to be an Ivy, but it wasn't, we wasn't chasing Ivies. It was he wanted to do something, and we were looking for schools that fit what what I felt would bring out the best in him.
I love that, and I think that that's an important point to reiterate. For those who are choosing to go that route, they need to find the space that fits them and not vice versa, because there's so many different options out there. And I've heard these horror stories where, people are chasing the financial aid, they get there and they don't like it, and then it's like, now
Mhm.
what? Or they're chasing, the image or whatever, and they don't get the support that they need, and they end up coming home and not finishing because they didn't have the support that they needed. So it's really important to do the research and to know the institution before you decide to commit, for sure.
Well, and to know what it is that you want to do.
Right,
There's
right.
there's thousands of schools, and there are schools and programs that are curated
Mhm.
just for what you need to do. So if you want to, I mean, uh, I don't know, like architecture or um, business or nursing or whatever it is, chemistry, like find the program that supports what it is that you want to do. And it's also important to know why you want to go into a
Oh,
certain
yeah,
field
that why is very important.
because life be lifing, and life will give you 10,000 reasons to quit.
Hmm.
First semester, first semester, your financial aid might not come through. You might get like your car breaks down, just whatever, whatever. You might have a loss in the family. I lost my grandfather. Like
My grandfather passed while I was in college as well, yeah.
there's
Mhm.
got to be, I had my first like major heartbreak my last semester of
Mhm.
college. Like that's
Mhm.
hard stuff to like push through to get to the finish line. And if you don't know your why, and that's not stronger than anything else that's happening, then it's going to be hard to finish, especially
Mhm.
coming from where we're from, because
Mhm.
we don't have, a lot of us don't have security blankets or a trust
Right.
fund to just,
As far as the
you
family
know,
that's gonna pick up where we left off or what have you, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Mm-mm. We don't have that. So knowing your why, knowing what it is that you want to do, and that changes. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to be like married to it, but it has to come from within. And that can evolve as you learn, as you meet new people, as you gain more experiences. That can change, but it has to come from you. It can't be your parents pushing you to go to college. That's not going to last. Telling you, oh,
Right.
you need to be a lawyer because you can. Like, I can do a lot of things, but that doesn't mean that that's what God wants me to do. Like, when you're anointed to do something, it comes easier. You get
Mm-hmm.
you get ideas about what it is that you're like just innovative stuff that just comes from within. It's the
Mm-hmm.
craziest thing. But when you can do something and somebody else is telling you, well, you should do this because you can, then it's going to be more, it's going to feel like a labor instead of a labor of love, and you're not going to enjoy the journey.
Yeah, there's a saying that I hear people quote a lot where it talks about how when you're doing something that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And it's because you're enjoying it. And so it doesn't feel like work, even though it might be classified as a job or what have you, but it doesn't feel like
Yeah,
work because it's your passion.
yeah. And when it does feel like work, it's time to do some reflective work, figure out what your next step
What's
is.
next, right?
That's when you know your soil is running out of nutrients and maybe you need to be replanted somewhere else.
I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that so much. Okay. So as you're, dropping all these gems and jewels right quick, what is it that you know now that you wish you would have known earlier in life?
um I wish I would have known. um I had a lot of fear when I was
Mm,
young. I had a lot of fear. I had a lot of fear of failure. I put limitations on myself, as far as like I only saw what was possible through what I believed what I could do.
interesting.
But now I don't view life that way. Like, I feel, um like, for my son, with my son, for example, like, I didn't put limitations on where he should go to school. I didn't put I didn't limit him based on location, based on money, just shoot from the moon, you
Hmm.
know? And I had people in the background like, oh, well, how are you going to pay for that? And, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. But I didn't want him to inherit that fear from me.
Uh-huh.
So, and I just feel like, okay, if I believe that God can do the impossible, then I have to act like it, right?
That's
Like,
right.
I can't pay for it, but if he's supposed to be there and only 5% of people who apply is supposed to be there, then I believe the funds is going to come, you know? Not like it's just going to drop out of the sky, but there's scholarship opportunities, there's things that align, like when you're in your calling.
Hmm.
And um and I'm happy to say that it's aligning.
See there?
So if I had known that and lived in that principle when I was younger, you know, my life would have been on a completely different trajectory. But I was limiting myself based on where I thought I could work and go to school and okay, I can earn this much. Like, I didn't really tap into the divine protection that and abundance that was already there for me.
Right.
I was just like, oh, I can do that, or I can't move this far because, my family is here. Like, I put a lot of limitations on myself that I wish that I hadn't. I passed up study abroad opportunities because nobody in my family had passports, or I didn't know how I was gonna um survive without the ability to work. And my
Mm-hmm.
professor was just kept telling me like, "Oh, you should go." She was calling me, and I was like, "No, no." I just completely let fear run a huge part of my life.
Mm.
And now looking back, I was like, man, and I was able to accomplish things still living in fear.
Isn't that the amazing part right there, right? It's like even with all those limitations, you still were able to do great things. So imagine how much greater it could be. And that's what,
Yep,
the scriptures say that he'll do exceedingly abundantly above all that we could ask or imagine. We can't even
yep,
fathom the potential, but we limit ourselves because we try to walk by sight. And we
yep,
forget that we need to be walking in full knowing that God is in control, that
yep,
source is in control, that whatever you need, it will be given to you if it is in your best interest and in his
yep.
will. Right. Yeah.
Because I think about J.K. Rowling and how she got that book idea from a dream.
Hmm.
And it's all like weirdness, you know what I mean? But it's like super entertaining. And how many of us get those intuitive ideas, book ideas, movie ideas, and when I look at innovation, I'm like, I could have thought about that. Like I the
And the thing
post-it.
is
Come
often
on.
the ideas come to multiple peoples, but it's that one who actually says, okay, I'm going to take it. I'm going to implement it. I'm going to make it come to life. And, they do what it takes to bring it to fruition. Those are the ones who win
Mhm.
every time.
And that's what I think, like, God uses us, right? You get chosen. You get that purpose, you get those little inklings. If you don't step through that window of opportunity, he gonna give it to somebody else because that purpose is still gonna be like it's
Right.
still
It will
gonna
be
come to fruition.
fulfilled.
Yes. His word is not gonna be void. You just not gonna be the vessel at that time. Like, okay, you're not ready. I'll come back to you. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But now I'm like, I'm ready. I want
I'm right
I'm
there with you,
here.
girl. When he told me go talk to your friends and get their life story, I was like, okay.
I'll do it. Okay. Yeah, I'm at that point now where I'm like, where like 2024 was a tough year, but
Hmm.
I see God's hand in all of it, and how things are lining up. And now I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just get out the way. I'm
Huh.
gonna just let you do you, and you tell me when I need to go and what I gotta do, and then I'll do it. But until then, I'm gonna just wait. Like,
That sounds like a good idea to me.
mm-hmm.
Okay,
It
so as we've been talking, you know that I'm an educator and often I work with math teachers, right? And that infamous question, when am I ever going to use this in my life? That always comes up. And so I want you to think about your job and can you give us some concrete examples of when mathematics is used in your particular profession?
um when I well with business it's a lot, but it's mostly like calculating profits and losses.
Hmm.
Um so in my profession we have to know how much everything costs. So in business we have to know what everything costs, what we're charging for the service, and then what our profits are.
Hmm.
And depending on that balance sheet, that's what determines if we get bonuses, if we have to do layoffs or make changes. Um, yeah, that's the most math I think that I use. But interestingly enough, I had some guys doing some repair work at my grandma's house, and they were doing some drywall work,
Hmm.
and they had to cut like these 90-degree angles in there, and it had to be like perfect. And I was wondering, like, they didn't have any like tools or whatever. And I was like, well, how do you do the 90-degree angles, and they did something with a ruler, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's the Pythagorean theorem. Like, I have not seen people do that in real. I never thought I was ever gonna have to use that, but like seeing them use the little thing and I was like, you guys are doing geometry, you don't even know you're doing geometry.
Right. A lot of times those proofs when you're trying to find out how to create the perpendicular bisector and all those type of things, when you're drawing the lines and drawing the angles, you can use those also to help you. I've seen people who do a construction, they'll use their tools to create those angles, find the
Yeah,
bisectors or what have you. Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. I thought that was so interesting because I never thought I was gonna see that in my lifetime outside of that geometry class. I said, wow.
Very much so in building and constructing, lots of mathematics there for sure.
Yeah. And in business, we have a lot, we have to do projections. We have to do forecasting to help with our production team,
So
to
that's
know, like,
modeling. Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So we do have to do some forecasting models. We have to do forecasting for sales team, how much each sales team member has to produce in order for the company to make a profit.
Mhm.
And then what we have to sell things for. If we can do like a sale to push sales, because sometimes we have to keep the machines working.
Mm.
Like, so we'll sell things really cheap just to keep the machines working, keep the guys busy, because you can lose people too if they're not busy, if they're not installing. Then we lose the crews to
Interesting.
something else. Yeah, the construction industry is it's different because especially if you have skill sets that are transferable. So
Mhm.
when cabinets, for example, when that picks up and that's booming, we'll lose people to cabinets or to flooring. And then when that slows down, then they'll come back to, countertops. But they prefer, it's hard to keep stone because it's so heavy and it's
Mhm.
so it's a really,
It's not
really
an easy
tough.
material to work with, and so a lot of people prefer to do easier things.
Yeah, wood is light, and those
Right.
little tiles sometimes is lighter, but then you're like on your knees all the time. Roofing is probably like the entry level worst one, so we don't lose a lot
Nobody
of
wants to be on the roof.
No, it's hot when it's hot, it's cold when it's cold. Like, you can't put a heater up there. It's you just in the elements. So yeah, it's the trades are interesting. Very, very interesting.
All right. Well, I have enjoyed learning more about you and your career and the trajectory of where you've come from to where you are now. And so my final question will be, what advice would you give to young people who are listening to your story today?
Um uh that's what advice would I give? I feel like I have so much to say, but I'm trying to figure out like what I think one of the main things that I would say is to fall in love with yourself
Mm,
because that's who you're going to spend the rest of your life with. So, knowing yourself, knowing what makes you happy, what makes you smile, what brings you joy, I think is the center of everything that flows. Like, everything flows from that point forward. Everything that you share with the world, everything that comes back to you, like, comes back to that core of you. It doesn't matter what's happening around you. I think as long as you're solid and to who you are, like, that just opens up like so many doors, so many opportunities.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Once again, Shantay Powell. It's been a pleasure talking to you, my friend. And I love
Oh,
you. And thank you,
I love you. All right. Talk to you later.
thank you.